This is Sharon K. Damaso, and I will be doing the code review for Jaime Coder. There are three parts that I will be covering, namely code, variables, and handling. And first, I will be discussing the review for codes. The code implementation have an expected result based on requirements given by the client. The code structure and style are really great, which in the code implementation are separated by front end and back end. The code structure is clean and readable as well. The code indentation are applied correctly in the class, function, conditional statements, and tags of bug. Next is the code standard and convention. Code follows a coding standard and proper guidelines. The code provides a uniform appearance written by different developers. The code is loosely coupled, testable, and easy to maintain. The developers ensure that the naming convention is readable, that it doesn't have to put a comment to define the purpose of it. Moreover, for some uncommon terms or technical terms, the developers were able to put a clean comment to identify its purpose. There are also no unneeded procedures done in the coding, and all functions or codes are reachable. For the repeated code block, since the developers are doing parallel development, there are instances that the functions being used by different modules have been duplicated by other modules, such as populating the test collection. The manage test module and send assessment module have the same functionalities that may put into one. The codes are testable, but the initialization for the Firebase on client side has been duplicated. There are some warning persists whenever the system has been loaded. The complexity of the module, such as the send assessment endpoint, is too complex, tightly coupled, and has 156 code lines. There are some block of codes that can be separated into different functions and call it instead to make it more testable. Next is the variable. For the declaration of variables, all variables have been properly declared and readable. All variables are following the naming convention for consistency. All variables starts with a letter. All variables are in lower camel case. The assigned variables have a proper type based on the value retrieved from the Firestore collection, such as string, integer, date, and boolean. For the variable casting is applied correctly for some variables needed to cast like from the string to date or string to integer. There are some unused and redundant variables that needs to be removed too. All data has been assigned to the correct data type and has been used correctly to each statement. For the memory allocation, the allocation, the JavaScript values are allocated when an object is created, string, date, etc. They are freed automatically when they are no longer used. The variables declared outside the function have been used as well as the functions. The variables declared inside the function can only be accessed inside the function itself. The storage of the files has been used efficiently, and all the input fields have validation and tested before it will be proceeded to the backend. For the error handling, error return values are handled. Try and catch has been applied to handle the exception. In retrieving the collection from Firebase, there is a block of codes validating if the collection is empty or not before to proceed in manipulating the collection. All errors that might encounter are being handled, and a proper error message will return to the UI to inform the user that there is an issue encountered. One example is if the user already exists, it will return an error from the Firebase and the system prompt an error message that the user trying to register already exists. There However, there is no handling convention being followed. Some return a status 500 for an error, meanwhile others only define a constant error message. There is a redundant code in some modules, and there are leftover stubs or test routine in the code. The developers did not make any test functions. There is also no code implementation to test the indexes, pointer subscripts against array, record, or file bounds. Loops from different modules, especially in send assessment, has been logically constructed. However, it is the best practice to separate some block of codes to another function to avoid tightly coupled codes. Um, that's it for my code review. Thank you.